Have you ever left a conversation feeling as if something was quietly stolen from you? You sit down with someone, expecting nothing more than a casual exchange of words, yet when you walk away, a strange heaviness lingers. No arguments, no conflict, just an ordinary discussion that somehow left you drained, as if your very essence had been siphoned away. And then there are other moments, rare, electric moments, where a conversation leaves you feeling the opposite. Instead of exhaustion, you're buzzing with energy, inspired, more alive. It's as if, for a brief moment, you were plugged into something vast and unseen. What is this mysterious force that makes some people deplete us while others empower us? This phenomenon is more than just social chemistry. Beneath the surface, an invisible current is at work, an exchange of energy that shapes how we feel after every human interaction. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who spent his life studying the unseen depths of the human psyche, believed these experiences weren't random. Conversations, he argued, weren't just about words, they were about energy. Something far deeper was happening beneath the polite exchanges and casual small talk. Every human connection is a transfer, an unspoken transaction of psychic energy, one that can leave us either enriched or depleted. The question is, why, and more importantly, how do we protect ourselves from those who take more than they give? To understand why some interactions leave us drained while others revive us, we must first understand Jung's concept of psychic energy, what he called libido. Unlike Freud, who reduced libido to sexual energy, Jung saw it as something much greater. To him, libido was life force itself, the invisible current that powers our thoughts, emotions, creativity, and dreams. It is the energy that fuels our passions, drives our ambitions, and sustains our sense of self. Just as the body needs food to survive, the psyche needs this energy to function. When it flows freely, we feel alive, connected, and full of purpose. But when it is blocked, siphoned, or misdirected, we experience exhaustion, confusion, and a slow, creeping sense of depletion. And this is where the true mystery lies. How does this energy move between people, and why do some individuals seem to drain it from us while others restore it? Every interaction we have is an energy exchange. Some are balanced. Both individuals leave feeling uplifted, their internal reserves replenished. But others are strikingly one-sided. You've felt it before. The person who dominates the conversation, absorbing all the attention, leaving you feeling like an empty vessel. The friend who constantly offloads their worries onto you, as if your mind were a dumping ground for their burdens. The subtle manipulator who never raises their voice, never demands anything outright, yet somehow always leaves you feeling like you've lost a part of yourself. These aren't just personality traits, they are energy dynamics, unconscious forces shaping every relationship in ways we rarely notice. And then there are the rare ones, the people who, even in moments of deep discussion, awaken something inside us. They don't take, they ignite. They leave us feeling more whole, more inspired, more aligned with who we truly are. According to Jung, these effects aren't random. They are the direct result of how energy moves between us, revealing a hidden layer of human connection that few ever truly understand. But what exactly is happening in these energy-draining encounters? What unseen forces are at work when someone leaves you feeling hollow, as if they've siphoned something vital from you? This isn't just about difficult personalities or bad moods. Something deeper is happening beneath the surface. Carl Jung spent decades exploring the invisible mechanics of human interactions, uncovering the psychological mechanisms that make some relationships exhausting. His findings reveal an unsettling truth. Many of the people who drain us aren't fully aware of what they're doing. The exhaustion they create isn't always intentional, but it's no less real. It's the byproduct of unprocessed emotions, unconscious projections, and deep-seated psychological patterns at play. One of the most powerful forces behind energy-draining encounters is projection. Jung believed that we all carry parts of ourselves we don't want to face, our fears, insecurities, and unflattering traits. Instead of acknowledging these uncomfortable aspects, we push them away, banishing them into the unconscious. But the psyche doesn't let them disappear so easily. Instead, it finds another way. We project them onto others. This means that when you're dealing with someone who constantly criticizes, undermines, or burdens you, you may not be dealing with their true self at all. You're dealing with their unresolved inner world, their disowned fears, their hidden weaknesses, and whether they realize it or not, they're making you carry a psychological weight that isn't yours to bear. Imagine a manager who secretly doubts their own leadership abilities. Instead of facing this insecurity, they become hypercritical of their team, nitpicking small details, making unreasonable demands, and never expressing satisfaction. The weight of their own self-doubt is too heavy to hold, so they unconsciously transfer it to those around them. Or picture a friend who refuses to acknowledge their own jealousy. Instead of owning it, they constantly downplay your achievements, offering backhanded compliments and subtle jabs that leave you questioning yourself. In both cases, the energy drain isn't just from the conversation, it's from being forced to wrestle with emotions that aren't even yours. No wonder it's exhausting. Another powerful force at play is emotional contagion. Emotions are not isolated within us, they spread. Just as a yawn can trigger yawns in others, emotions ripple outward, affecting everyone nearby. Research in neuropsychology has shown that mirror neurons in our brain make us unconsciously mimic the emotional states of those around us. This means that when you sit across from someone seething with resentment, panic, or bitterness, your nervous system begins to echo their inner turmoil. Your body tenses, your mind shifts. You begin to absorb the very stress they are carrying, even if no words are spoken. This is why some conversations feel like an emotional ambush. You walk in feeling fine, but by the end, you're weighed down by emotions that never belonged to you in the first place. But perhaps the most profound explanation for energy-draining people comes from Jung's concept of the shadow. The shadow is the hidden part of ourselves, the traits we deny, suppress, or refuse to acknowledge. If you see yourself as kind, your shadow holds your capacity for cruelty. If you identify as logical, your shadow contains your irrational impulses. The more we suppress these parts of ourselves, the more they slip through the cracks, shaping our actions in unconscious ways. And this is where the real energy drain happens. When someone hasn't confronted their own shadow, they unknowingly inflict it on those around them. A person who refuses to acknowledge their own anger doesn't express it outright. They weaponize silence, spread negativity, and create tension wherever they go. Someone who represses their need for control may constantly play the victim, subtly manipulating others without ever seeming to do so. These unconscious behaviors create an invisible battlefield in every interaction. You aren't just responding to what they say, you're navigating the storm of unspoken conflicts, repressed emotions, and buried fears that lurk beneath their words. Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The same is true for relationships. Until people confront their own unconscious patterns, those patterns will control their interactions, leaving everyone around them drained. This is why awareness is power. The more we understand the forces at play, the better we become at protecting our own energy, setting boundaries, and refusing to carry what was never ours to begin with. Across history, across cultures, across the quiet corridors of everyday life, certain figures appear again and again. People who leave you feeling drained, exhausted, as if they've taken something invisible from you. You've met them before. You've felt their presence. You've walked away from conversations with them, wondering why you feel so depleted, so weighed down by emotions that aren't even yours. But who are these people? What makes them so consuming? Carl Jung's work provides us with an answer, one that reveals patterns hiding in plain sight. Jung believed that certain psychological archetypes exist in all of us, but in some people, these archetypes become distorted. When this happens, they turn into unbalanced energy forces, taking far more than they give. They drain, not through malice, but through the unconscious forces controlling them. And once you recognize these patterns, you begin to see them everywhere. First, there is the victim. This is the person who has woven helplessness into their very identity. To them, life is a relentless series of misfortunes, and they are powerless to change it. Every conversation circles back to their suffering, yet solutions are never welcomed, only pity. You try to help, to suggest a way forward, but your words are deflected, dismissed. The victim isn't looking for solutions, they are looking for rescuers, for emotional caretakers, for people to validate their suffering. And yet, beneath this constant plea for help lies something more insidious: resentment. As Jung would argue, the victim has disowned their own inner strength, their capacity for growth, and instead, they project that power onto others. They both admire and resent those who move forward in life, feeding off their energy, yet rejecting any true transformation for themselves. Then there is the narcissist, perhaps the most notorious energy drain of them all. The narcissist demands attention, validation, admiration. Conversations orbit around them. Your achievements dismissed, your struggles compared to theirs. At first, they might be charming, magnetic even, pulling you in with their confidence, but over time something shifts. The relationship becomes an emotional siphon, a one-way transaction, where your role is simply to reflect their importance back to them. In Jungian terms, the narcissist has failed to cultivate a genuine relationship with their own inner world. Instead of facing their true self, they rely on others to construct an image of who they want to be. They drain you not through overt aggression, but through their unending hunger for validation, leaving you empty in their desperate quest to feel full. Next comes the martyr, the one who gives and gives until they make sure you feel guilty for it. Their sacrifices are never freely given. They are transactions, invisible debts you are expected to repay. After all I've done for you, they say, not always in words, but in sighs, in silence, in subtle acts of emotional manipulation. The martyr drains you by making you feel endlessly indebted, bound by an obligation you never agreed to. But beneath this pattern lies something deeper. Jung would argue that the martyr has rejected their own needs, disowning their desires and projecting them onto others. They see others taking what they themselves are too afraid to claim, and so they give not from generosity, but from resentment, ensuring that those around them never feel free. Then there is the manipulator, the one who plays chess with emotions. Their power lies not in direct confrontation, but in subtle control. They use guilt, fear, and obligation like tools, bending interactions to their will. They say things that make you question yourself. They shift blame so skillfully that, by the end of the conversation, you're apologizing without even knowing why. Being around them feels like navigating an invisible minefield, one where every step could trigger an unseen emotional consequence. Jung would say that the manipulator is someone who has disowned their own vulnerability. Instead of acknowledging their fears, they control others, ensuring that they are never the ones who feel weak, and in doing so, they drain those around them, not just of energy, but of clarity, of confidence, of self-trust. And finally, there is the energy vampire, a term modern psychology has embraced, but one that echoes Jung's deepest insights. These people don't fit into just one category. They are the ones who monopolize conversations, turning every minor inconvenience into a personal crisis. They are the ones who fill a room with chaos, their restless energy fragmenting those around them. They may not intend harm, but their presence alone scatters the emotional stability of others. Their minds are in constant turmoil, and without realizing it, they externalize that turmoil onto those nearby. And when you leave their presence, you feel it. Your thoughts are unfocused, your emotions unsettled, your very sense of self fragmented by the whirlwind of their unconscious energy. But now comes the most difficult question, one that Jung himself would have asked. Why do these people keep appearing in your life? Is it simply bad luck? Or is something deeper at work? Jung believed that our external relationships reflect our internal world. If you find yourself repeatedly entangled with energy-draining people, it may not be random. It may be a sign of something unresolved within you. Unhealed emotional wounds have a strange way of attracting people who will reopen them. If you grew up with emotionally unavailable parents, you may unconsciously seek out emotionally unavailable partners. If you were taught that love must be earned through sacrifice, you may find yourself surrounded by those who demand endless emotional labor from you. The psyche repeats its patterns, not to punish, but to heal, to force us to confront what we have long avoided. Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The people who drain you, who exhaust you, who challenge your emotional boundaries, may be teaching you something about yourself. The patterns that deplete you most are often the ones that hold the key to your deepest self-awareness." So the question is no longer just, who is draining my energy? The real question is, what within me is allowing it? There is a reason why some people drain you while others restore you. It's not just their personality or the way they speak, it's something deeper, something hidden in the silent undercurrents of human interaction. Carl Jung understood this long before modern psychology caught up. He saw that energy-draining relationships weren't random, nor were they simply the fault of those who take too much. Sometimes the real reason these patterns persist lies within us, and until we recognize our role in these dynamics, we will continue to find ourselves exhausted, giving more than we should and wondering why we feel so depleted. One of the most common reasons energy vampires keep showing up in our lives is people-pleasing tendencies and weak boundaries. If you struggle to say no, if you constantly prioritize the needs of others over your own, if you feel guilt at the thought of disappointing someone, you are, in essence, an open invitation for those who take more than they give. Jung emphasized the need for individuation, the process of becoming a whole, autonomous self. Without a strong sense of self, boundaries remain fragile, and those seeking to offload their burdens onto others will gravitate toward you. The victim, the narcissist, the murderer, and the manipulator all thrive in environments where energy is freely given but rarely returned. The question is not just why they drain you, but why you allow it. Another key factor is a lack of self-awareness. If you don't recognize your own emotional patterns, you cannot protect yourself from those who exploit them. Have you ever wondered why certain types of people seem to show up in your life over and over again? Why you repeatedly attract relationships that leave you exhausted? This is no coincidence. The unconscious seeks familiarity, even if that familiarity is painful. If you grew up with emotionally unavailable caregivers, you may unconsciously gravitate toward partners who withhold affection. If you were raised to equate love with sacrifice, you may find yourself drawn to those who demand more than they give. As Jung observed, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The patterns that drain you most may be the very ones you unconsciously recreate again and again until you finally see them for what they are. But perhaps the most profound insight of all lies in the shadow. Jung believed that the aspects of others that irritate or exhaust us most are often reflections of something we have rejected within ourselves. The friend whose endless neediness drains you. Could it be that you have denied your own need for support? The person whose aggression unsettles you. Could it be that you have suppressed your own ability to assert yourself? The more we disown parts of ourselves, the more they show up in the people around us. Energy-draining relationships, then, aren't just external problems to be solved. They are mirrors, revealing the parts of ourselves we've been unwilling to face. As Jung put it, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. The question is, will we resist the transformation, or will we allow it to make us whole? But now comes the practical question. How do we protect ourselves from energy-draining people and relationships? Jung's psychology provides several powerful strategies, tools, not just for defense, but for transformation. First, develop greater self-awareness. Pay attention to your energy levels after interactions. Who consistently leaves you feeling depleted? What patterns emerge across different draining relationships? Keep a journal, track your emotions, and observe when and where your energy is being siphoned away. Jung often spoke of complexes, emotional wounds that, when triggered, cause disproportionate reactions. The people who drain you most effectively may not be random. They may be activating wounds that have remained unhealed. The more you understand your own triggers, the more control you gain over how much energy you allow others to take from you. Second, set clear boundaries. Jung believed that a well-developed ego, a strong sense of self, is essential for psychological health. Without boundaries, psychic energy leaks out to anyone who demands it. Learn to say no without guilt. Recognize when someone is pulling you into their emotional orbit and refuse to engage beyond what feels healthy. Simple phrases like, "I can't take that on right now, that doesn't work for me," or even silence when someone expects an emotional reaction can be powerful acts of self-preservation. Boundaries are not just about keeping others out, they are about keeping yourself intact. Third, actively manage your energy. Jung was deeply interested in Eastern traditions like meditation, seeing them as ways to direct and conserve psychic energy. Develop your own restorative practices. Meditation to clear your mind, time in nature to reconnect with primal forces, creative expression to channel energy in meaningful ways, and physical movement to prevent emotional stagnation. Energy once drained must be replenished. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Be intentional about where your energy goes and who has access to it. But perhaps most importantly, do your shadow work. As Jung emphasized, the parts of ourselves we reject don't disappear, they simply act out in unconscious ways. If you keep attracting emotionally draining people, ask yourself, what part of me allows this? What traits do you most despise in others? What qualities do you struggle to accept within yourself? What emotions do you suppress out of fear or shame? By integrating these disowned aspects, you become less reactive to them in others. Instead of unconsciously attracting energy-draining relationships, you become aware of them before they take hold. This is what Jung called wholeness. Not perfection, but the ability to embrace all aspects of yourself without fear. When you reach this state, you no longer attract or tolerate those who drain you. You naturally gravitate toward balanced, reciprocal connections. As we've explored today, energy drainage isn't just a feeling. It's a psychological reality shaped by deep, unconscious forces. The people who drain you aren't just difficult personalities. They reflect real psychological patterns identified by Jung decades ago. We've examined the archetypal energy drainers, the victim, the narcissist, the martyr, the manipulator, and the general energy vampire, each of whom operates through an imbalance of psychic exchange. But more importantly, we've looked inward. Energy draining relationships don't just happen to us, they reveal something about us. Our wounds, weak boundaries, lack of self-awareness, and unacknowledged shadow aspects all play a role in keeping these dynamics alive. And yet, this realization is not a burden, it is an opportunity. Because if we are part of the pattern, we are also part of the solution. Jung believed that the path to true psychological freedom is through individuation, the process of integrating all aspects of the self, conscious and unconscious. When you become whole, energy-draining people lose their power over you. You set boundaries without guilt. You protect your energy without apology. You stop repeating old patterns and instead you create new ones. Ones rooted in balance, in mutual nourishment, in relationships that give as much as they take. So the real question is not just, who is draining my energy? The real question is, what within me is allowing it? And once you answer that, the patterns begin to break. The cycle begins to end, and you step into a life where your energy is yours again. Every relationship is an exchange of energy. Some lift us higher, filling us with a sense of connection, purpose, and clarity. Others leave us drained, as if something essential has been quietly taken from us. Energy flows between people in ways that are often unseen, yet deeply felt. And when you consistently feel depleted after being with someone, that feeling is not a coincidence. It is a message. Your body and psyche are trying to tell you something. The question is, are you listening? Carl Jung believed that true transformation begins when we stop looking outside for answers and start looking within. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. The patterns that exhaust us, the relationships that leave us feeling hollow, the dynamics we keep repeating, they are not just external problems to be solved. They are internal lessons waiting to be learned. The more conscious we become of the hidden forces shaping our interactions, the more power we have to change them. You have the right to choose connections that nourish rather than deplete you. You have the ability to recognize projection and manipulation for what they are, attempts by others to offload their unconscious burdens onto you. And most importantly, you have the responsibility to protect your own energy. This is not selfishness, it is self-respect. Jung saw individuation, the journey to wholeness, as a sacred task. To become fully yourself, you must stop allowing others to drain you. You must learn to say no, to set boundaries, to walk away when necessary, and to surround yourself with people who reflect back not just your energy, but your strength. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you encountered any of the archetypes we discussed today? What strategies have helped you protect your energy? Share your experiences in the comments below. And remember, your energy is precious. It is the life force that shapes your reality. Guard it, direct it, share it only with those who honor its value. Because in the end, protecting your energy isn't just about avoiding exhaustion. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. If you've made it this far, drop a 100 in the comments. It shows you are part of the 1% that's improving every single day.